Okay. So I apologize that I cannot be there in person, but due to the recent restrictions by the Ministry of Health, because I landed a week ago from the States, so I need to do this session remotely. So today I'm going to talk about how to build privacy and security into deep learning applications. And it's a very interesting topic that gained a lot of attention recently, and it's starting to get more and more attention in the foreseeable future. So basically what am I talking about? So just a second, sorry, let me just, yeah. Okay, so basically AI has evolved a lot in the past few years, and we see tremendous improvement in speech recognition, computer vision, machine translation, and of course, natural language understanding. However, one of the things that we also see is that what we call AI is eating software, and it is becoming a key part in every product. And actually, AI is becoming a major product in a lot of in a lot of mission critical systems. But one of the things that we need to understand is that the person who is designing the AI product, these are the data scientists. So most of the data scientists care about accuracy, new type of topologies and cool stuff, rather than things that people really care about when we are talking about, doing these, putting these systems in mission critical systems, which security, privacy, safety, and reliability. And that's the whole encapsulation of what we call robust AI. So what does it mean basically? So another thing that is happening is that data privacy is also evolving. And we see things like GDPR, which the European Union is adopting. We see that the state of California is adopting similar methodologies like CCPA. And Facebook and other companies are being affected a lot if they're not preserving customer data. And we see that based on how the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica affected Facebook share and how Facebook is dealing with customer data right now. And we see that more and more organizations are dealing with data privacy. So that opens the door to two questions that we can ask ourselves. So first of all, can these things work together? And if you're thinking about it, AI by definition is some kind of technology that needs data, and usually lots of data. And data privacy regulations are techniques that they prevent from us using the data. And if we are thinking about it in a broader term, how can we protect the systems and how can we make sure that these systems are safe? So these are the two main problems that we can think about. And in this session, because it's a mostly like 20-25 minute session, so I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what's going on in this area. So I'm going to cover three topics. One of them is what I call privacy and stability of models. The other one is what I call machine learning on private data, or basically, can you apply machine learning and data without the person who is doing the machine learning knowing the content of the data, which is a field that is gaining a lot of attention right now. And the third thing is can we attack AI systems, or basically adversarial attacks on AI systems? And the other side of the equation, which is deep fakes, meaning that can these AI systems be used maliciously to fool humans? So what do I mean exactly by privacy and stability of models? So one question that arises is that usually when we are training a model or when we are training a neural network, the person who is training usually keeps the data very safe. So we are silo the data, we make sure that the data warehousing is stored in a proper manner. But the question is that, can we make sure that the neural network that was trained on does easily disclose any information about the data? And in various machine learning applications, we are training these neural networks on very, very sensitive data. So meaning medical records, transaction information like social security and credit numbers, and sometimes sensitive imagery data. And a question arises is can we reconstruct the data if we have access to the neural network? Another question that we can ask ourselves is that can we create some kind of a metric to evaluate the privacy of the algorithm? So unfortunately, the answer for the first question is that the neural network does disclose information about the data. And 2.5 years ago, researchers from Berkeley were able to train a neural network on language models, and they trained the language model on data that contained social security numbers and credit card numbers. And by just accessing the model, they were able to reconstruct some of the content information. So for the first question, unfortunately, these neural networks, although that we are thinking that that we are keeping the data safely, these neural networks do disclose privacy on the information, which a lot of the times it opens the door to a very, very big set of problems that that raise a lot of concern. And the second thing that the second interesting thing that these researchers were doing is that they were able to show and introduce some kind of a metric to evaluate the privacy of a neural network, meaning that we are now once we have some kind of a neural network, we can assess, at least from a risk assessment, how private is the neural network. And if we are thinking about, okay, so these are the only attack vectors that we can think about, so unfortunately this is not the case as well, because people were able to show that by just accessing the model, we can steal the model. Meaning, what I mean by stealing, I meaning that I can reverse engineer the model and by that put my hands on the model, which for a lot of companies, this is a very, very valuable IP. And another type of attack vector is attending to what we call high-level statistics attacks, which basically what we are trying to do, we don't care about specific data points, rather we care about some kind of a high-level statistical information of the data, which is also something that can be very, very sensitive. Think about if some kind of a hospital has some kind of a very, very sensitive information. We don't care about specific patients, but we care about some kind of a statistical properties of the data. So can we do something about it? And right now, people are scratching their head if we can do something about it. But there is a notion that is called differential privacy, which was invented or was thought about by the information security guys. And the differential privacy, long story short, it's some kind of a framework that provides some kind of a guarantee or some kind of a mechanism to give some privacy to any type of algorithm, specifically some kind of a statistical or learning-based algorithm. And how does it do that? So think about that. What we are doing is we are adding some kind of a randomness on each data point. And this, this small random perturbation, what that it does, it masks the specific data point, but creates but still preserves the high level, statistical properties of the overall data. So basically, we cannot reconstruct, specific data points, which help us, preserve, the privacy of the algorithm. But on the other hand, it doesn't harm a lot the learning process. And 3.5 years ago, researchers from Google, led by Ian Goodfellow, and then later 2 years, they created a better methodology. They created an algorithm which stands for PATE, which stands for Private Aggregation of Teacher Ensembles, which implement differential privacy for neural network models. So by the way, I apologize, but I cannot hear any of the crowd, so I cannot see if, what are the feedbacks. So the second topic that I want to cover is what we call machine learning on private data. So when we're thinking about the machine learning process, so there are two things that we can think, that there are two main things that we are doing while we are doing machine learning. One of them is the training process, and the other one is the inference. And when we are thinking about training on private data, there are three questions that we are interested in. So the first question is that a lot of the data is being collected on edge devices. And think about edge devices like mobile devices, some type of sensors or IoT devices. And a lot of the times we want to train to create some kind of a machine learning model that encapsulates the data, or create some kind of a mathematical model of the data that's being collected, without the data being exported out of the edge devices. That from a first glance seems a little bit impossible, but it's doable. And the second question that arises is let's say that we have multiple parties, each of them has some kind of a data set, and they want to create some kind of a mutual model together. Think about two insurance companies that both of them has some kind of a very interesting data sets of frauds, and they say, okay, how about we create some kind of a mutual model of this fraud, and both of us can get benefit from this model. However, they cannot share the data with each other, or they cannot share the data with a third party that they trust them. So the question is that, can they create some kind of a system that does that? And the third question is, of course, even if we were able to solve the first and second question, we were able to create such models, how we make sure that these models do not able to produce some of the data that is being trained on. Basically, it goes back to to what I've been showing about privacy of models. So again, because this is a short session, I just give you a glimpse of what's going on. So for the first problem, data on edge devices, there is a technique that is called federated learning, which started back in 2016. Then there were a few papers, and there is a very, very interesting review right now that came out recently by like 50 researchers from the 12 different institutes about federated learning. And for the second problem, this problem is quite familiar to the information security guys. And basically this problem is that we want to do some kind of sophisticated mathematical calculation without disclosing the data. So basically, the information security guys were able to invent for some protocols like secure multi-party computation or various encryption protocols to do that. And that's what basically people are doing today in the AI community, applying these protocols on steroids to do these neural networks, these neural networks training on secret data without each party knowing the data. And for the fourth problem, can we make sure that the models do not disclose any information about the data? This is of course related to what we call neural-based differential privacy, and there are techniques that are being implemented today and being researched today. So the last topic that I want to cover is what we call adversarial attacks and deepfakes. So this is a topic that is gaining a lot of attention in the past few years, and it's gaining a lot of attention because when you are thinking about AI is a new kind of software. And when we are thinking about a new kind of software, what is happening is that we are starting to see that there are different attack vectors that we can think about. And when we have new attack vectors, when we are discovering these attack vectors, we need to understand what are the attack vectors and what are the attack defenses that we can, defense vectors that we can do against them. And when we are thinking from the machine learning perspective, there are two types of attack vectors that we can think about. One of them is attack vectors during the inference time, and one of them is attack vectors during the training time. When we are thinking about the inference time, usually we are thinking about some kind of a party that release the model into the wild, and we have some kind of an adversary that tries to get information or tries to do some kind of a malicious thing to the model or by accessing the model. And by that we have two definitions. One of them is what we call white box attacks. And when white box attack is meaning that the adversary has some information about the model, and he wants to exploit information or to evaluate information based on the model and to see if the model is vulnerable. And black box attacks are these are type of attacks assume that the adversary has no information about the model. When you are talking about training phase attacks, of course, most of the time over there is to ruin the training process. And how do we do that? How do we ruin the training process? We are ruining by, first of all, we can poison the data, meaning we can create some kind of malicious data points to harm the training process, or can alternate the data collection process by doing some kind of attacks on untrusted data collection components. So what are the goals? So why do we even think that adversarial will do that? And people were able to classify two different types of categories. One of them is what we call confidentiality and privacy. And when we are talking about confidentiality and privacy, the attacker wants either to steal the model, which is called the hyperparameter attack, either to have, to reconstruct some of the data or some of, the specific data points in order to get information or to put their hands on sensitive data. And an example you can think about, if we have some kind of language model or some kind of a model that were trained on social security number or credit card numbers, we want to reconstruct some of this very, very sensitive information. The second type of attacks is what we call integrity and availability. And the goal of the adversarial is to attempt, to control the model outputs or to harm the output or the availability of the neural network. So think about that today we have autonomous driving systems. And if, for example, some kind of an adversarial can harm these neural networks that works in this autonomous driving system, it can be some kind of a life or death situation. So these are the second type of attacks. And I want to deep dive a little bit of what are integrity attacks. So integrity attacks are usually type of attacks, and they started like 5 or 6 years ago when people, when researchers from Google were training, computer vision models. And basically they were able to show that by taking some kind of an image, and you can see this image on the left, and add some kind of a very, very small perturbated noise on top of the image, and it messes up with the classifier. So as you can see, we have an image of a panda, and the panda, the classifier recognize it as a panda with almost 60% accuracy. And then we are adding some kind of a very, very small controlled noise on top of that. And then we can see that the panda is, for the human eye, it's still a panda, but the classifier recognizes it as a gibbon monkey with 99.3% accuracy. So the basic idea behind these attacks, and this is, for images, but I will show that it's also valid for voice and text, is that we are trying to modify the images with some kind of, a noise that we know how this neural network works to some extent. And there are different types of attacks. There is, some kind of attack that is called, one-shot attacks, which, we are, doing this, adding these noises in a single step. There is what we call multiple type of attacks, which is called iterative attacks. We are doing multiple steps. And there are various ways of attacks and various ways of, defense mechanism against them. But the most, but one of the things that we need to understand, and it's very important, is that if, for example, in the classical cybersecurity mechanisms, in order to attack systems, we needed some kind of, good knowledge or good background in computer science in order how to exploit, the vulnerability of the systems. Today, we're able to show that we can attack these AI systems in the physical world. So what does it mean? So look at the left image, and we have some kind of, this was disclosed recently by researchers from McAfee, and they were able to hack a Tesla autopilot systems. So how did they do that? They took a stop sign, which, as you can see, this is in the US, so the stop sign has a speed limit of 35 miles per hour. And they were able to add some kind of, if you can see my marker, some kind of a very, very small duct tape on the three side, and the autopilot will recognize it as 85 miles per hour. So basically, they were able to show that they were able to show in the real world that Tesla doesn't recognize, properly the sign, and it doesn't, it drives in a controlled area very, very fast. So these things are very, very dangerous, because if you're thinking about it, if until recently, we needed, in classical cybersecurity systems, we need, to have some background. Today, every person with a duct tape can go in the streets of San Francisco and mess up with, Tesla autopilot systems. So these things are really, really dangerous and need to be taken care of. So if you're thinking that these things only work on computer vision, so the answer, unfortunately, is no. People were able to show that actually, these systems, speech recognition systems can be easily fooled, and actually, if I have the a priori knowledge or some information about the system, the speech recognition system, I can make sure that I can add some kind of what we call adversarial noise, and the system will recognize whatever I want. Also, 2 months ago, researchers from MIT were able to show that all of the cool transformer-based models like BERT are also hackable, also can be easily fooled. All of these things, although we are super, super excited, they are really vulnerable to very, very simple type of attacks. And, as going back to the basic idea, we need to make sure that, we know what's going on over there. And today we don't know. So the last part of the talk, I want to give you some kind of a glimpse of what's going on with what we call adversarial data synthesis, or basically deep fakes. So when you're thinking about, adversarial data synthesis, we have, two types of things that we can think about. One of them is deep fakes, and one of them is voice cloning. And deep fakes, I assume that, a lot of you know what is deep fakes. They started as a nice thing that, we can generate, some videos, some full videos and replace faces. And as you can see from these images, we saw some kind of an image of a nice lady, and then we add, the photo of Nicolas Cage. And we can also do this, for videos. But if we are thinking about, the malicious side of that, it's, the things that we can do are really, really disturbing. So, executives at the government, the US government, like CEO Sundar Pichai said that this is one of the biggest threats that AI is generating today. And internet companies are putting a lot of efforts right now to see how and if they can fight deepfakes. So one thing that people are really aware about deepfakes, but one interesting thing that some people are not aware is what we call voice cloning. And voice cloning is some kind of very, very dangerous technology that can be used for good. But if you think about it, I only need 5 seconds of your voice, of someone's voice, in order to create a full replica of their voice. And I can say whatever I want. And actually, 4 months ago, hackers were already able to show or to create some kind of a replica of some kind of a German company CEO, and by selling by one of the branches of the $250,000. And there are also some reportings that companies also lost tens of millions of dollars because of this voice cloning. So, what does it mean for all of us? So the thing that we need to understand is that there is some kind of an emergence of a new field. And this new field is some kind of a combination of machine learning and information security. And I'm saying that this is some kind of a new field because the AI guys weren't able to solve these problems of how we make sure that AI is robust. And the information security guys also weren't able to solve it because they don't have the good enough background in the AI. So this is some kind of a new field in AI security that is evolving, and I think that this is very, very interesting times to see how this field will be evolved. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the talk.